The alarm in Jake Martinez's clinic started beeping at exactly 3 in the afternoon. He was wrapping a bandage around a miner's hand when the windows shook. A loud boom echoed across Havens Ridge, making everyone in the small medical building freeze. "What was that?" the miner asked, his eyes wide. Jake didn't answer. He was already moving to the window. In the distance, beyond the trees, a column of black smoke rose into the sky. It was thick and dark, twisting upward like a massive snake. His training kicked in immediately. That wasn't a mining accident. That was something much bigger. "Stay here," Jake told the miner, grabbing his emergency medical bag from the corner. The bag was always ready, always packed. Old habits from his military days never really died. He ran outside to his small transport vehicle and drove toward the smoke. The roads were rough, cutting through dense forest. Other vehicles were heading in the same direction. Everyone wanted to see what had happened. Jake pushed his vehicle faster. If people were hurt, every second mattered. When he reached the crash site, his breath caught in his throat. There was a crater in the ground, maybe half a mile wide. Trees were flattened in every direction. In the center of the crater sat something that didn't belong on Havens Ridge. It was a ship, but not like any human ship Jake had ever seen. The metal was smooth and dark, twisted from the impact. Strange symbols covered its hull. Jake parked and ran toward the wreckage, his medical bag bouncing against his side. Other colonists were standing at the crater's edge, afraid to go closer. Jake didn't hesitate. He slid down the crater wall, loose dirt giving way under his boots. The ship's hull was cracked open. Smoke poured out from the damaged sections. Jake pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth and climbed through the opening. Inside, the corridor was dark and filled with strange lights that flickered weakly. The air smelled wrong, like metal and something sweet he couldn't identify. Bodies lined the corridor. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like crystal. It changed colors even in death, shifting from blue to purple to gray. Forearms hung limply at their sides. Jake checked for pulses but found none. These beings, whoever they were, had died on impact. He moved deeper into the ship, following the sound of labored breathing. In what looked like a command center, he found her. She was larger than the others, her crystalline skin brighter, more complex in its color patterns. She wore armor that was cracked and broken. Blood seeped from multiple wounds, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. Jake dropped to his knees beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. They were golden, with no pupils, just solid gold that seemed to glow faintly. She looked at him with confusion and something that might have been fear. She tried to speak, but the words were in a language Jake didn't understand. "I'm a doctor," Jake said slowly, hoping she might understand his tone if not his words. "I'm going to help you." She tried to push him away with one of her forearms, but she was too weak. Jake gently moved her arm aside and started examining her injuries. His hands moved on instinct, checking for bleeding, broken bones, internal damage. Her biology was completely alien, but some things were universal. She was dying. That much was clear. Jake opened his medical bag and pulled out supplies. He had no idea if human medicine would work on her, but doing nothing definitely wouldn't help. He found the worst bleeding and applied pressure. Her blood was strange, almost silver in color, and it felt warmer than human blood. "Stay with me," Jake said, working as fast as he could. "Don't you dare die on me." Outside, he heard vehicles approaching. Lots of them. The military had arrived. Heavy boots rang against the ship's metal floor. A voice called out, "Anyone in here?" "In here," Jake shouted back. "I've got a survivor. She needs immediate evacuation." Commander Kyle Barnes appeared in the doorway with 6 soldiers. The commander was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When he saw what Jake was working on, his expression hardened. "Step away from it, Martinez," Barnes ordered. "She's dying," Jake said, not looking up from his work. "I need to stabilize her before we can move her." "That's not a request. Step away now." "That's a Thessian. Do you have any idea what you're dealing with?" Jake finally looked up. "I'm dealing with a patient who will die in the next 10 minutes if I don't stop this bleeding. Now you can either help me or get out of my way." Barnes pulled out a communication device. "This is Commander Barnes. Confirm identification. We have a Thessian in the crashed vessel. Appears to be royalty based on the armor markings. One human civilian is providing medical assistance." The device crackled. A voice responded, urgent and sharp. "Secure the area. Do not let the human continue treatment. We need to assess the political situation before taking action." Jake's hands never stopped moving. He had found a way to clamp off one of the major bleeding points. The Thessian's breathing was still terrible, but it was more stable than before. You heard them, Martinez. Stop what you're doing. No, that's an order. I'm not military anymore, Commander. You can't order me to let someone die. One of the soldiers raised his weapon slightly, not quite pointing it at Jake, but making the threat clear. Another soldier, Lieutenant Sophie Grant, stepped forward. Jake recognized her. They had served together years ago. Commander, Sophie said carefully, if she dies while in our custody, it could be seen as an act of war. The Thessians aren't part of any alliance, but they have more military power than anyone in this sector. Letting her die might be worse than saving her. Barnes was quiet for a long moment. The Thessian queen made a sound, something between a groan and words Jake couldn't understand. Her golden eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Then she spoke. This time the words came through a small device on her armor. It translated her speech into something Jake could understand. This human claims to be a healer? Yes, Jake said. I'm trying to save your life. Why? Her voice was weak but curious. You do not know me. Because that's what I do. I save lives. It doesn't matter who you are. She studied him for a long moment. Then with great effort she raised one of her 4 hands. She placed it over her chest and said something in her own language. The translator device spoke. I invoke the law of sanctuary. I place my life in this human's hands. He is my chosen healer. By ancient law, none may interfere. The words hung in the air. Commander Barnes spoke into his device again. Did you get that? She just invoked some kind of sanctuary law. The response took longer this time. When it came, the voice sounded stressed. Confirmed. Thessian law of sanctuary. If she's placed herself in his protection, we legally cannot interfere without breaking treaty protocols we don't even have yet. Martinez is now responsible for her life under their law. This is a nightmare. Barnes lowered his weapon. You have no idea what you just got yourself into, Martinez. Jake didn't care about politics or laws. He cared about the fact that this being's breathing was improving slightly. He had managed to stop the worst of the bleeding. Now he needed to figure out what else was damaged. I need better lighting and my full medical equipment. Can someone bring my treatment table from the clinic? Sophie nodded. I'll get it. Commander, we should set up a secure perimeter. If she really is Thessian royalty, more of their ships will be coming. Barnes gave orders to his soldiers. The perimeter was established. Jake's equipment was brought from his clinic. For the next 6 hours, Jake worked on the Thessian queen with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. Every time he thought he had stabilized one problem, another appeared. Her biology was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Sophie stayed nearby, helping where she could. You know this is insane, right? She said quietly while Jake was examining what he thought might be the queen's equivalent of a liver. Probably, Jake admitted, but I couldn't just walk away. Why not? You walked away from everything else after the accident. Jake's hands paused for just a second. Sophie was one of the few people who knew about his wife and daughter, about the terraforming accident that had killed them while he survived. That's different, is it? He didn't answer. He went back to work, closing wounds, stabilizing organs, doing everything he could with the limited knowledge he had. The queen drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she would watch him with those golden eyes. Other times she would speak in her language and the translator would share fragments about her empire, her people, her enemies. As night fell over Haven's Ridge, Jake finally sat back. The queen was stable. Not healthy, not safe, but stable. She would live through the night. Maybe longer if he could figure out more about her biology. You did it, Sophie said, sounding surprised. For now, Jake replied. He was exhausted. His hands were shaking. But this is just the beginning. She's got internal damage I can't even identify yet. I need help. Real help from people who know Thessian biology. That help is coming, Commander Barnes said from the doorway. Our sensors picked up multiple Thessian ships entering the system. They'll be here within hours. And Martinez, you better hope they're friendly. Because as of now, you're the single most important human in this sector. You're the only thing standing between that queen and death. And according to their laws, you're responsible for her survival. Morning came too quickly for Jake Martinez. He had barely slept, staying close to Queen Velara through the night. Every few hours, he would check her vital signs, adjust her position, monitor the makeshift medical equipment he had rigged to keep her stable. His clinic had been transformed overnight into something resembling a military hospital, with guards at every entrance and equipment that hadn't been there yesterday. Sophie Grant brought him coffee as the sun rose. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel worse," Jake admitted, taking the cup gratefully. The hot liquid helped clear some of the fog from his mind. "How's the situation outside?" "Tense. The Thessian fleet arrived 2 hours ago. 12 warships in orbit. They're not doing anything hostile, but Commander Barnes has our defense forces on high alert. The Thessians are demanding to see their queen, but they're respecting the sanctuary law. For now." Jake looked at Velara. Her color had improved slightly overnight, shifting from the sickly gray blue to something closer to healthy green blue, but she wasn't out of danger. Not even close. "I need help, Sophie. I'm working blind here. I don't know her biology. Every treatment is a guess. Help is coming. A xenobiology expert from Earth, Dr. Lisa Chen. She's supposed to be the best in her field. She'll be here this afternoon." Jake hoped Dr. Chen was as good as advertised. He turned back to his patient and started his morning examination. Her breathing was better, but there was still internal bleeding somewhere that he couldn't find. Her alien biology kept surprising him. Just when he thought he understood how something worked, he would discover a new organ or system that changed everything. The door opened, and a figure entered that made Jake freeze. It wasn't human. The being stood 7 feet tall with the same crystalline skin as Velara, but his was darker, almost black-blue. His armor was different, covered in marks that looked like battle scars. 3 of his 4 arms rested on weapons. The 4th held up a device that glowed softly. "I am High General Zethra," the being said through a translator device, "commander of the Thessian Imperial Fleet. I have come to see Queen Velara." Sophie's hand moved toward her weapon, but Jake held up his hand. "Easy, he's not here to fight." "How do you know?" Sophie whispered. "Because if he wanted to fight, we'd already be dead." Jake stood and faced the general. "I'm Jake Martinez. I'm treating the queen." Zethra's golden eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You are the human she chose. The one who invoked the sanctuary bond. I didn't invoke anything. She did. By accepting her plea, you became bound to her under our law. Do you understand what this means?" "Not really," Jake admitted. "I'm just trying to keep her alive." Zethra moved closer to Velara, his movements careful and controlled. He looked down at his queen, and something in his expression softened. "How badly is she injured?" "Bad. She has internal bleeding I can't locate. Multiple fractures in her bone structure. Some organs I can't even identify are damaged. She needs proper medical care from people who understand Thessian biology. Our doctors are aboard the fleet. They can be here in minutes." Jake shook his head. "The sanctuary law prevents that, doesn't it? If I accept help from Thessian doctors, it invalidates the protection she claimed. She'd be back under political control." Zethra studied Jake with new interest. "You understand our ways. I understand that she was running from something when she crashed. She didn't invoke sanctuary for medical reasons. She invoked it for political ones. Someone tried to kill her, and bringing in your doctors might give them another chance." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He removed a small data device from his armor and held it out to Jake. "This contains detailed biological information about Thessian physiology, medical protocols, treatments for common injuries. It is meant for Thessian healers only, but I will give it to you. Use it to save her. Won't you get in trouble for this? I have served Queen Velara for 300 years. I will do whatever is necessary to ensure her survival, even if it means breaking our own rules." Zethra placed the device on the medical table. "There are those in our empire who want her dead. They see her reforms as weakness. They fear the changes she brings. If she dies, our empire will tear itself apart in civil war." Jake took the device. "I'll do everything I can." "See that you do, human. Her life is in your hands. And if she dies under your care, sanctuary law or not, I will hold you personally responsible." The threat was clear. Zethra left as quietly as he had arrived. Sophie let out a breath she had been holding. That was intense. "He loves her," Jake said, looking at the data device. "Not romantically, but he'd die for her. I understand that feeling." Jake spent the next hour studying the Thessian medical data. It was written in their language, But the device had translation capabilities. He learned that Thessian biology was built on a crystalline structure that grew and healed differently than human cells. Their blood carried nutrients through resonance rather than simple circulation. They had multiple organs that served backup functions in case of damage. The more he learned, the more he realized how miraculous it was that Velara had survived at all. The crash should have killed her instantly. Her own biology had kept her alive just long enough for Jake to find her. Dr. Lisa Chen arrived in the early afternoon. She was younger than Jake expected, maybe 30, with quick movements and sharp eyes that took in everything. She barely introduced herself before diving into the medical data. "This is incredible," she said, scanning through files on her tablet. "I've been studying Thessian biology for 5 years, but always from tissue samples and old records. I never thought I'd get to work with a living patient." "She's not a research project," Jake said sharply. "She's a person who's dying." Chen looked up, surprised by his tone. "I know, I'm sorry. I get excited about the science sometimes. Let me examine her." Jake watched as Chen performed her examination. She was thorough and professional, but he could see the disconnect. She was treating this like a fascinating puzzle, rather than a life-or-death situation. It reminded him of doctors he had worked with during the war, the ones who saw soldiers as cases rather than people. "Her crystalline bone structure is fractured in 17 places," Chen said after an hour. "The resonance pattern in her blood is disrupted. She has significant damage to what I believe is her primary nutrient distribution organ. In human terms, think of it as a combination liver and heart. The bleeding you detected is coming from tears in the resonance chambers. Can we fix it? Theoretically. But the procedure is extremely risky. We'd need to essentially restart her entire circulatory system while repairing the damage. In humans, it would be like performing open-heart surgery, while the patient is conscious and aware. For Thessians, it's even more dangerous." Jake looked at Velara. She was still unconscious, her body fighting to stay alive. "If we don't do the procedure, will she die?" "Within days. Maybe hours. Then we do it. Start preparing," Chen hesitated. "Jake, I've never done this procedure." "I've only read about it in theoretical papers. If we make a mistake, we could kill her. And if we do nothing, she definitely dies. I'll take a chance over a certainty any day." They spent the next 3 hours preparing. Chen gathered equipment and set up monitoring systems. Jake studied the procedure over and over, memorizing every step. Sophie coordinated with Commander Barnes to ensure they would have uninterrupted time to work. When Velara woke briefly, Jake explained what they needed to do. She listened, her golden eyes focused on his face. "You believe this will work?" she asked through her translator. "I believe it's your best chance." "And if it fails?" "Then I'll have done everything I could." Velara's hand reached out and touched Jake's arm. Her crystalline skin felt warm and smooth. "I trust you, Jake Martinez. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. Your people are different. You did not see me as a threat or a prize. You saw me as someone who needed help. That is a rare gift in this universe." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He just squeezed her hand gently. "Rest now. When you wake up, this will all be over." The procedure took 6 hours. It was the most intense medical work Jake had ever performed. He and Chen had to work in perfect coordination, repairing damage while maintaining the delicate resonance that kept Velara's body functioning. Twice her systems nearly failed completely. Twice, Jake managed to pull her back from the edge. During the surgery, Jake entered a state of focused calm that he remembered from his military days. Everything else fell away. There was only the patient, the problem, and the solution. His hands moved with precision born from years of experience. When Chen hesitated, he guided her. When he needed a break, she stepped in. They worked as a team, and slowly, impossibly, it began to work. The bleeding stopped. The resonance pattern stabilized. Velara's color shifted from gray to blue to a healthy green-blue. Her breathing deepened and steadied. When it was finally over, Chen sat down heavily, her hands shaking. "We did it. I can't believe we actually did it." Jake felt exhausted down to his bones, but also something else. Something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Pride. Purpose. The feeling that what he did mattered. She's not out of danger yet. Recovery will take time, but she'll live. Against all odds, she'll live. Chen looked at Jake with Jake Martinez woke up to the sound of alarms. He was sleeping in a chair next to Queen Velara's bed, as he had done for the past week. The alarm meant someone had breached the outer security perimeter. He was on his feet immediately, checking Velara's vital signs. She was still asleep, her crystalline skin showing the peaceful blue-green of healthy rest. Sophie Grant burst through the door, her weapon drawn. "We have a situation. Someone tried to access the medical supply storage. They ran when security spotted them, but we found this." She held up a small vial filled with clear liquid. Jake took the vial carefully. "What is it?" "We don't know yet. It was hidden among the Thessian medical supplies that General Zethra sent down yesterday. Dr. Chen is analyzing it now." A cold feeling settled in Jake's stomach. The supplies had come from the Thessian fleet. They were supposed to help Velara recover faster. If someone had tampered with them, if someone had poisoned them, then giving them to Velara would have killed her. He had almost killed her himself. Jake ran to the lab where Dr. Chen was working. She looked up as he entered, her face pale. "Jake, this is bad. This compound, whatever it is, it's designed to attack Thessian crystalline structures. It would have caused complete system failure within hours. There's no antidote in any database I can access." "Where did it come from?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. The container has Thessian markings, official medical corps symbols. Either someone in their medical system is corrupt or someone very high up authorized this." Jake's mind raced. Velara had told him about enemies in her court, people who wanted her dead because she was trying to reform the empire. He had thought they would wait until she returned home to make their move. He had been wrong. They were trying to finish what the crash started. "We need to tell General Zethra," Sophie said. "If there's a traitor in his fleet, he needs to know." "Agreed. But we do it carefully. We don't know who we can trust." They arranged a meeting with Zethra in a secure location, away from the main military compound. The general arrived with only 2 guards, his face a mask of controlled anger as Jake explained what they had found. "Impossible," Zethra said, but his voice lacked conviction. "All supplies are screened. All personnel are loyal." "Someone got through," Jake said. "Someone who knew exactly what would kill her and how to hide it in plain sight." Zethra took the vial, examining it closely. His crystalline skin darkened, shifting to an angry red-purple. "Shadow agent, it has to be. Only they would have the skills and access to do this." "Shadow agent?" Sophie asked. "Elite assassins trained by the Imperial Court. They can infiltrate anywhere, become anyone. If one is here, Queen Velara is in grave danger." Zethra looked at Jake. "I must conduct an investigation within my fleet, but I cannot do it openly without alerting the assassin. They will try again. Then we use that," Jake said. "We make them think their first attempt worked. We tell everyone that Velara's condition has worsened, that she's declining despite treatment. The assassin will think the poison is working and might reveal themselves." Zethra considered this. "It is risky. If word reaches the homeworld that the queen is dying, it could trigger a power struggle that ends in civil war. If Velara actually dies, that happens anyway. At least this way we control the information." The general nodded slowly. "Very well. We will set this trap. But human, if anything happens to my queen, trap or no trap, I will hold you responsible." Over the next 2 days, Jake and Chen put on a show. They issued bulletins about Velara's declining health. They brought in more equipment, making it look like desperate measures to save her. They even had Zethra send down more medical specialists from the fleet, carefully selected ones he trusted, to make it seem like they were trying everything. Velara understood what was happening and played her part. She stayed in bed, letting her color shift to the sickly gray that indicated illness. When Zethra visited with his officers present, she appeared weak and unresponsive, but privately she was getting stronger every day. Jake continued real treatments in secret, helping her damaged arm regain function and rebuilding her strength. They talked during these sessions, sharing stories about their lives, their fears, their hopes. "Tell me about your wife," Velara said one afternoon while Jake was working on her injured arm. Jake's hands paused. He rarely talked about them, but with Velara it felt safe. Her name was Rachel. She was a terraforming engineer. Brilliant, funny, always seeing the best in everyone. Our daughter was Emma. She was 6 when they died. She wanted to be a doctor like me. "They would be proud of you," Velara said softly. "Of what you're doing here. Maybe. Or maybe Rachel would tell me I'm being an idiot risking my life for politics I don't understand. Is that what you think you're doing?" Jake thought about it. "No. I'm doing what I've always done, taking care of my patient." The politics just happened to come along for the ride. Velara's golden eyes studied him. You are a rare being, Jake Martinez. In all my centuries of life, I have met few who do what is right simply because it is right. Most beings act out of self-interest even when they pretend otherwise. But you truly care about helping others. That is why I trust you with my life. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He went back to working on her arm, feeling the weight of her trust settle on his shoulders. The trap was sprung on the third day. Dr. Chen made a show of running emergency tests on the new medical supplies. She acted concerned, checking and rechecking the results. Then she quietly contacted Jake with news that one of the containers was tainted. They watched on security cameras as personnel moved through the medical wing. Most went about their business normally. But one figure, a Thessian medical officer named Crinval, kept returning to the supply area. He would check equipment, adjust settings, and always seemed to be nearby when critical supplies were being used. That's him, Zethra said, watching the footage with Jake and Sophie. I know Crinval. He came to my fleet 6 months ago with excellent credentials. Now I see those credentials were manufactured. He is the assassin. What do we do? Sophie asked. We cannot simply arrest him. Shadow agents are trained to die rather than be captured. If we move openly, he will activate contingency plans we cannot anticipate. No, we must make him reveal himself. Jake had an idea. What if he thinks he's succeeding? What if we fake Velara's death? Absolutely not, Zethra said immediately. If word spreads that the Queen is dead even temporarily, the Empire will explode into chaos. Not if we control who gets the information. We stage it so only Crinval and a few trusted people know. We make him think he won, then we see what he does next. Does he report back to his masters? Does he try to escape? Either way, we learn who sent him. It was dangerous. It required perfect timing and absolute trust. But after hours of planning, they decided to try it. The operation began at midnight. Jake and Chen staged a medical crisis. Alarms went off. Staff rushed in and out. Through the windows, anyone watching would see frantic activity, desperate attempts to save the Queen. Crinval was on duty that night, supposedly helping with emergency medical supplies. Jake came out of the medical room, his face showing exhaustion and grief. In a voice loud enough to be heard, he told Sophie, "She's gone. I couldn't save her." Sophie's acting was perfect. She looked stunned, horrified. Are you sure? Her crystalline structure collapsed. Complete system failure. Time of death 01:43 hours. Jake slumped against the wall, the picture of a defeated doctor. From a hidden position, they watched Crinval. The assassin showed no reaction at first. He simply continued his work, professional and calm. But then when he thought no one was watching, he slipped away to a storage closet. Zethra's soldiers, positioned in advance, monitored him through sensors. Crinval pulled out a communication device, one that wasn't standard Thessian military equipment. He began transmitting a coded message. Now, Zethra commanded. The closet door burst open. Zethra's elite guards moved in, but Crinval was fast. He dropped the communication device and pulled a weapon, firing at the guards. 2 went down. Crinval ran, moving with impossible speed through the corridors. Jake heard the commotion and ran toward it. Sophie was ahead of him, her weapon drawn. They turned a corner just as Crinval burst into the medical wing. The assassin was heading straight for Velara's room. He's going to confirm the kill. Sophie shouted they couldn't let him reach Velara. If Crinval realized she was still alive, he would know it was a trap and might do something desperate. Jake did the only thing he could think of. He stepped into the doorway, blocking Crinval's path. The assassin didn't slow down. He crashed into Jake, sending them both sprawling. Crinval's hand went to Jake's throat, and Jake felt the pressure of crystalline fingers starting to crush his windpipe. He couldn't breathe. Black spots appeared in his vision. Then Sophie was there, her weapon pressed against Crinval's head. Let him go or I will end you. Crinval hesitated. In that moment, Zethra arrived with more soldiers. They pulled the assassin off Jake, restraining him with special bonds designed to hold even Thessian strength. Jake gasped for air, his throat burning. Sophie helped him up. You okay? Been better, Jake croaked. Crinval looked at Jake with something like respect. You would have died. The medical wing of Haven's Ridge shook as weapons fire lit up the sky. Jake could see flashes through the windows, bright streaks of energy as Thessian ships fought each other in orbit. General Zethra's loyal fleet against Duke Vorthan's rebel forces. The civil war that Valara had feared was happening right above their heads. "We need to evacuate the Queen," Commander Barnes said, entering the medical room with Sophie at his side. "This facility isn't designed to withstand a full assault." "Moving her is too risky," Jake protested. "She's stable but still healing. The stress of evacuation could set back her recovery." "Better set back than dead," Barnes replied. "Vorthan's ships are breaking through the orbital defenses. They'll reach the surface within the hour." Valara sat up in her bed, her crystalline skin shifting to determined purple. "Commander Barnes is correct. We must move. Jake, help me stand." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He helped Valara to her feet. She was steadier than he expected, though he could see the effort it took. Her fourth arm, the one that had been most damaged, still hung weaker than the others. They moved through the corridors as explosions rocked the compound. Outside, human and Thessian soldiers worked together to establish defensive positions. Zethra had landed with a contingent of his most trusted warriors, forming a protective ring around the medical facility. The general met them at the transport bay. "My queen, we have a ship ready. It will take you to my flagship where you will be safe." "No," Valara said firmly. "If I run to the flagship, Vorthan will claim I am hiding behind loyal forces. I will not give him that propaganda victory. We make our stand here. My queen, that is suicide. Vorthan has 3 times our numbers. Then we fight with intelligence rather than numbers." "Jake, you said humans have experience with asymmetric warfare." Jake nodded slowly, understanding what she was asking. "During the colony wars, we learned how to defend against superior forces. Guerrilla tactics, strategic retreats, turning the environment into a weapon. But that works for soldiers, not for protecting a queen. Then we adapt." "Sophie, your Commander Barnes has defensive positions established?" Sophie looked surprised to be addressed directly. "Yes, Your Majesty. Standard perimeter defense. We can hold for a while, but not indefinitely." "Show me your defensive plans." They spread tactical maps on a table in the command center. Jake watched as Valara studied the human defensive strategy with the eye of someone who had commanded armies for centuries. She asked questions, understood the answers immediately, and began suggesting modifications that combined Thessian and human tactics. "Here," she pointed to a valley approach. "Vorthan will expect us to defend the high ground. Instead, we let his forces enter the valley and trigger these buried charges. The terrain will work against him." Commander Barnes studied her suggestions, his respect growing visibly. "That could work. But we'd need perfect timing. Zethra can provide that. His warriors have been fighting together for decades. They know how to coordinate." Over the next hour, they refined the defensive plan. Jake found himself pulled into the strategy session, not as a medical officer, but as someone whose opinion Valara valued. It was strange, being part of military planning again after years of avoiding anything connected to his past. The first wave of Vorthan's forces landed just after dawn. They came in hard and fast, dropships disgorging Thessian warriors in full combat armor. Jake watched from the command center as the battle began. Human and loyal Thessian forces opened fire, their weapons creating deadly crossfire zones. But Vorthan's forces were experienced and disciplined. They advanced despite casualties, pushing toward the medical facility where they knew Valara was located. The defensive line began to buckle under the pressure. "Fall back to secondary positions," Barnes ordered. "Lead them into the valley." The retreat looked like a rout. Vorthan's forces pursued eagerly, thinking victory was at hand. They poured into the valley, hundreds of warriors in formation. Then Zethra triggered the charges. Explosions ripped through the valley floor. The carefully placed human explosives combined with Thessian energy mines created a maelstrom of destruction. Half of Vorthan's forces were destroyed in seconds. The survivors fell back in disarray. "Now we counterattack," Valara said, her voice cold and commanding. She had transformed from injured patient to warrior queen before Jake's eyes. Zethra's forces swept forward, driving the rebels back to their landing zone. It should have been a decisive victory. But then everything changed. A single figure stepped from one of the remaining rebel ships. He was massive, even for a Thessian, with skin that gleamed like black diamonds. His armor was ornate, covered in symbols of noble rank. Duke Vorthan himself had come to the battlefield. His voice boomed across the valley, amplified by his armor's speakers. "Queen Valara, I know you hide in that human structure. Come out and face me if you have any honor left, or have the humans made you into a coward?" Jake felt Velara tense beside him. He challenges me to ritual combat. I must accept or lose face with the noble houses. You're still recovering, Jake said urgently. You can't fight him at full strength. I have no choice. If I refuse, every house that supports me will question my fitness to rule. Forthen knows this. He times his challenge perfectly. Zethra entered the command center, his face grim. My queen, you cannot accept. Let me face him as your champion. Under Thessian law, can a queen send a champion in ritual combat for the throne? Velara asked. No, Zethra admitted. The challenge must be answered personally or conceded. Jake's mind raced. There had to be another way. What about the sanctuary bond? I'm connected to you under Thessian law. Doesn't that give me any rights in this situation? Priestess Shalnara, who had arrived with Zethra's fleet weeks ago, spoke up. The sanctuary bond is complex. Under ancient law, if the queen is unable to fight, her bonded protector may stand in her place. But that law has not been invoked in over 1,000 years. Because it was meant for Thessian protectors, not humans, Zethra said. No offense, Jake Martinez, but you cannot hope to match Duke Forthen in combat. He has fought for 800 years. He is a master of all combat forms. But he has to accept Jake as a valid champion, Velara said slowly, understanding dawning in her golden eyes. And if he refuses to fight a human, he loses honor. It puts him in an impossible position. And if he accepts and kills Jake? Sophie asked quietly. The room fell silent. Jake felt everyone's eyes on him. He thought about his wife and daughter, about the promise he had made to himself after they died. He had sworn to never care about anything again, to never risk feeling that kind of pain. But somehow over these past weeks he had started caring again. About Velara, about the future, about making things right. I'll do it, Jake said. I'll be your champion. Jake, no, Sophie grabbed his arm. This is insane. You're a doctor, not a warrior. I was a soldier before I was a doctor. I remember how to fight. Velara placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. I cannot ask this of you. The risk is too great. You're not asking. I'm offering. You saved me, Velara. When I found you in that crashed ship, I was a dead man walking. I had given up on everything that mattered. But helping you, being part of something important again, it brought me back to life. Let me return the favor. If you die, the sanctuary bond may kill me as well. Our lives are connected now. Jake smiled grimly. Then I better not die. The preparation took 2 hours. Zethra provided Jake with Thessian armor modified for human proportions. It was lighter than standard armor, designed for speed rather than raw protection. Healer Tavor, the Imperial physician who had been helping with Velara's recovery, worked with Dr. Chen to give Jake temporary biological enhancements. Nothing that would last, but enough to improve his speed and strength for the fight ahead. Sophie taught him the basics of Thessian combat weapons. They were elegant and deadly, requiring skill rather than brute force. Jake learned quickly, his military training adapting to the new forms. Velara spent the time with him, not speaking much, just being present. Through their sanctuary bond, Jake could feel her emotions: fear, hope, gratitude. It was strange, knowing someone else's feelings so intimately. When it was time, Jake walked out to the valley alone, Forthen waited, his massive form radiating confidence. Behind him, his remaining forces watched. Behind Jake, humans and loyal Thessians gathered to witness. So the queen sends a human pet to die in her place, Forthen said, his voice dripping with contempt. I expected cowardice, but this exceeds even my low expectations. Under sanctuary law, I stand as Queen Velara's champion. Do you accept the challenge or forfeit? Forthen laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. I accept. Killing you will be brief entertainment before I finish what my assassin failed to do. They began. Forthen moved with speed that shocked Jake. The Duke was massive but incredibly fast. His first strike nearly took Jake's head off. Jake barely dodged, rolling away and coming up in a defensive position. The Duke pressed his advantage, raining blows that drove Jake backward. Each impact sent shockwaves through Jake's body. Even with the armor and enhancements, he was outmatched in raw power. Forthen had centuries of combat experience. Jake had a few weeks of crash training. He was going to die. Jake knew it with certainty, but he had to last long. Jake woke in a bed that wasn't his own. The ceiling above him was made of crystalline material that shifted colors slowly, creating patterns that would have been beautiful if his entire body didn't feel like it was on fire. Every breath hurt. Every small movement sent waves of agony through his torso. "You should not be awake yet," a voice said. Healer Tavor appeared in his vision, the Thessian physician's golden eyes filled with concern. "The injuries you sustained should have kept you unconscious for days. How long?" Jake's voice came out as a croak. 3 days since the battle. You have been in and out of consciousness, but this is the first time you have been truly aware." Tavor began checking monitoring equipment. "Your recovery is remarkable. Faster than any human should heal. The sanctuary bond with Queen Velara appears to have fundamentally altered your biology." Jake tried to sit up, but Tavor pushed him back down gently but firmly. "Rest. You may be healing quickly, but you are far from recovered. Duke Vorthan's blade nearly killed you. If not for the bond, you would have died on that battlefield. Velara, is she okay?" "The Queen is well. More than well, actually. Something happened during your fight with Vorthan. The bond between you changed. It is stronger now, more permanent. Our medical scans show that you both carry traces of each other's biology. In all my centuries of study, I have never seen anything like it." Before Jake could respond, the door opened and Velara entered. She moved with the grace of someone fully recovered, but Jake could see the concern in her golden eyes. She dismissed Tavor with a gesture and sat beside Jake's bed. "You should have died," she said quietly. "When Vorthan's blade pierced you, I felt it as if it had struck my own heart. I thought I had lost you." "Takes more than a duke to kill me," Jake said, trying to smile. "It hurt, do not make jokes. You fought for me. You nearly died for me. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. I made my choice." Velara reached out and took his hand. Her crystalline skin was warm against his. "The Imperial Court has summoned me home. With Vorthan dead and his fleet scattered, the rebellion is broken. But I must return to consolidate power and prove my fitness to rule. The noble houses will be watching for any sign of weakness. When do you leave? That depends on you. Jake Martinez, I ask you formally to come with me as my personal healer and advisor. Not as a prisoner or a trophy, but as a free being who chooses to help me reform an empire. Your presence alone will send a message to my people that cooperation with other species is possible. What you did standing as my champion has already become legend across Thessian space. You are famous now, whether you want to be or not." Jake thought about Haven's Ridge, about his quiet clinic, about the life he had built after losing his family. It would be easy to return to that, to let Velara go back to her empire while he stayed in his comfortable isolation. But that life felt empty now. He had remembered what it was like to care about something, to be part of something larger than himself. Velara needed him, not just as a doctor, but as proof that her vision of a reformed empire could work. "I'll come," Jake said, "but I have conditions. Name them." "Sophie Grant comes with me. I trust her, and I'll need someone from home watching my back. Also Dr. Chen. She's brilliant and deserves the chance to work with Thessian medical science properly. And I want regular communication with Haven's Ridge. That colony is my home. I'm not abandoning it forever." Velara smiled. "Agreed to all conditions. Though I should warn you, the Imperial Court is dangerous. There are forces there who will see you as a threat. An alien who has the Queen's trust and affection is a target. I survived Vorthan. I can handle some politicians. Do not underestimate them. Warriors are direct. Politicians use poison, both literal and metaphorical. But you will not face them alone. I will protect you as you have protected me." The journey to the Thessian homeworld of Tharvelos took 2 weeks. Jake spent most of it recovering and learning about Thessian culture from Priestess Shalnara. The priestess was patient with his questions, explaining the complex web of noble houses, ancient traditions, and honor codes that governed imperial society. "You must understand," Shalnara said during one lesson, "our empire is thousands of years old. Change comes slowly. Queen Velara's reforms threaten the power structures that have existed for centuries. Many nobles see you as a symbol of everything wrong with her vision. So I'm walking into a hostile court where half the people want me dead. Great. Not dead necessarily. Most will simply want you to fail, to prove that humans cannot function in Thessian society. They believe that without you, the Queen will abandon her reformist ideas." Sophie, who was sitting in on the lesson, laughed without humor. "No pressure, Jake." Dr. Chen was more optimistic. She spent her time studying Thessian biology and medical practices with healer Tavor. The two had formed an unlikely friendship, sharing knowledge freely. Chen's enthusiasm was infectious. and even Tavor seemed excited about the possibilities of cross-species medical cooperation. When they finally arrived at Tharvalos, Jake understood why the Thessians called it the Jewel of the Empire. The planet was beautiful, with cities that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. Crystalline structures caught the light, creating rainbows that danced across the sky. The capital city stretched as far as Jake could see, a testament to centuries of civilization. The Imperial Palace was at the city's heart, a massive complex that combined ancient architecture with advanced technology. When Jake stepped off the ship, he was immediately overwhelmed by the sheer number of Thessians present. Thousands lined the walkways, watching Velara's return. Their crystalline skin created a sea of shifting colors. General Zethra had arrived ahead of them, preparing the way. He met them at the palace entrance with a contingent of royal guards. "My queen, welcome home. The noble houses await your formal return in the throne room." "Let them wait a bit longer," Velara said. "First, I want Jake and his companions settled in quarters appropriate to their status. They are my honored guests and will be treated as such." Jake's quarters turned out to be a suite larger than his entire clinic on Haven's Ridge. Crystal windows looked out over the capital. The furniture was designed for Thessians but had been modified for human proportions. Sophie and Chen had similar rooms nearby. "This is insane," Sophie said, looking around Jake's suite. "We're colonists from a backwater world. We don't belong in a place like this." "Velara wants to make a statement," Jake replied. "By treating us as honored guests, she's telling the nobles that humans are worthy of respect, or painting targets on our backs. That too." The formal presentation to the noble houses happened the next day. Jake wore clothes provided by Velara's staff, simple but elegant. Sophie and Chen accompanied him, along with Commander Barnes, who had arrived with a small diplomatic delegation. They were the first humans to officially enter the Thessian imperial court. The throne room was enormous. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, organized by house and rank. Their armor and clothing displayed wealth and power. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the imperial throne. It was carved from a single massive crystal that glowed with inner light. Velara entered from a side door, and every being in the room bowed. She wore full imperial regalia, her armor polished to a mirror shine, her forearms adorned with symbols of rank. She looked every bit the ancient and powerful queen she was. But when she took her throne and began speaking, Jake heard the reformer underneath the ceremony. "Noble houses of the Thessian Empire, I return to you having faced death and betrayal. Duke Vorthan sought to end my life and plunge our empire into civil war. He failed because I found allies in unexpected places." She gestured to Jake. "This is Jake Martinez, a human healer who saved my life when he had no obligation to do so. He stood as my champion when I was too injured to fight. He is bonded to me by sanctuary law and by blood. I present him to you as proof that cooperation between species makes us stronger, not weaker." The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some nobles showed interest, even approval. Others looked disgusted. One noble, his skin shifting to angry red, stood and spoke. "My queen, with respect, bringing an alien into the imperial court sets a dangerous precedent. Next, you will want to give them rights, positions of power. Where does it end?" "It ends with a stronger empire," Velara replied calmly. "An empire that does not fear the universe but embraces it. That learns from others rather than isolating itself. This human saved my life. What have you done for your empire lately, Duke Kreshnal?" The noble sat down, chastened, but Jake could see the anger in his crystalline features. He had made an enemy. Over the following weeks, Jake learned to navigate the imperial court. It was exhausting. Every conversation had hidden meanings. Every gesture could be an insult or a test. He made mistakes constantly, offending nobles without meaning to, missing subtle social cues that Thessians understood instinctively. But he also made allies. Lady Kashara, Velara's cousin, took him under her wing. She was a reformist like Velara, and saw Jake as a valuable tool in their political battles. She taught him how to read Thessian body language, how to understand the color shifts in their skin that indicated mood and intent. Healer Tivor became a genuine friend. The physician was fascinated by. The trial of sovereignty began at dawn. Jake stood in the imperial arena, a massive structure that could hold 50,000 spectators. Every seat was filled. Thessians from across the empire had come to watch their queen prove her worth or fail and lose her throne. Velara stood beside him, her armor gleaming in the morning light. She looked calm, but Jake could feel her nervousness through their bond. This trial would determine everything. High Priestess Shalnara stood at the center of the arena, her voice amplified to reach every spectator. The trial of sovereignty has been called. Queen Velara stands accused of being unfit to rule due to alien influence. She will face 3 challenges: physical prowess, strategic wisdom, and healing grace. Her champion, the human Jake Martinez, will stand with her in these trials, as the sanctuary bond demands. The first challenge was combat, not against a single opponent, but against multiple warriors in sequence. Velara would fight first, then Jake. If either failed to defeat their opponents, the trial was lost. Velara's opponent entered the arena. He was huge, even for a Thessian, his crystalline skin showing patterns of a lifetime warrior. They fought with traditional weapons, blades that hummed with energy. The combat was brutal and beautiful, 2 masters of their craft pushing each other to the limit. Velara won, but barely. She had the skill, but her body was still not fully recovered from her crash months ago. Jake saw her favor her once-injured arm, saw the slight hesitation that came from old wounds. But she prevailed, and the crowd roared approval. Then it was Jake's turn. His opponent was chosen specifically to counter him. A fast warrior, smaller than most Thessians who fought with human-like unpredictability. They had studied Jake's fighting style from his duel with Vorthin and found someone who could match it. The fight was brutal. Jake's opponent was good, anticipating his moves, countering his techniques. Jake took hits that would have killed a normal human, but he wasn't entirely human anymore. The sanctuary bond had changed him, given him resilience beyond natural human limits. He won through endurance. His opponent was skilled but not used to fighting someone who refused to stay down. Jake kept getting up, kept attacking until finally his opponent made a mistake and Jake's blade found its mark. Non-lethal as the trial rules demanded, but decisive. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered. Others grumbled that a human had no place in their sacred trials. Jake didn't care. He had survived round 1. The second challenge was strategy. They were presented with a complex military scenario, a simulation of an empire under attack from multiple fronts. Velara had to make decisions about resource allocation, fleet movements, and diplomatic negotiations, all while a council of military experts challenged every choice. Jake watched as Velara demonstrated why she had ruled for centuries. Her mind was sharp, seeing connections and possibilities that others missed. She made bold choices that seemed risky, but were actually carefully calculated. When the military council tried to trap her with impossible scenarios, she found creative solutions that surprised even them. But then they turned to Jake. The human champion must also demonstrate strategic wisdom. Present your solution to the following problem. A human colony is under attack by pirates. The colony has requested Thessian military aid. As advisor to the queen, what do you recommend? It was a trap. If Jake recommended sending help, they would accuse him of favoring humans over Thessian interests. If he recommended not helping, they would claim he didn't care about human lives. Either way, he would look bad. Jake thought carefully before answering. I would recommend sending aid, but not for the reasons you expect. A Thessian fleet protecting a human colony sends a message across the galaxy. It says the Empire keeps its word and protects the weak. It builds trust with other species, which creates trade opportunities and political alliances. The cost of one military operation could be repaid tenfold in future cooperation. That's not favoritism. That's good strategy, the military council conferred. Finally, the lead officer nodded. Acceptable. The human shows understanding of long-term strategic thinking. 2 challenges down, 1 to go. The third challenge was called Healing Grace. It tested a ruler's wisdom and compassion. A series of petitioners would come before Velara, each with a problem or dispute. She had to render judgments that were fair, wise, and consistent with Thessian law. The cases started simple. Property disputes. Trade disagreements. Velara handled them with ease, showing knowledge of law and a talent for finding solutions that satisfied all parties. But then came the hard case. A Thessian noble accused a human trader of cheating him in a business deal. The trader claimed the noble was trying to avoid paying what he owed. Both had evidence. Both seemed credible. Velara questioned both parties carefully. She examined the evidence. Then she made her judgment. The human trader acted within the law but without honor. He used legal loopholes to gain advantage, which is technically correct, but morally questionable. The Thessian noble should have read his contract more carefully, but his accusation of cheating is not supported by evidence. My judgment is this. The trader keeps his profit but is barred from doing business in Thessian space for 5 years. The noble pays his debt, but must complete a course in interspecies commerce law before engaging in future deals with aliens. It was a brilliant judgment. Neither side got exactly what they wanted, but both learned important lessons. The crowd murmured approval. Even the conservative nobles seemed impressed, but the trial wasn't over. The final petitioner was brought forward and Jake's heart sank. It was a Thessian child, maybe the equivalent of 10 human years old. She had a medical condition, a degenerative disease that affected her crystalline structure. Champion Jake Martinez, High Priestess Shalnara said, "This child suffers from crystal decay syndrome. It is considered incurable by our best healers. As the Queen's champion and her chosen healer, you must demonstrate that your medical knowledge is worthy of our empire. Cure this child or the trial is lost." Jake felt panic rise. This was impossible. He had learned a lot about Thessian medicine, but curing a genetic disease he had never seen before, in front of thousands of witnesses? It was designed to be a failure, to prove that humans couldn't match Thessian medical science. But as he examined the child, something occurred to him. He had access to both human and Thessian medical knowledge. He had worked with Dr. Chen and Healer Tavor for months, combining techniques from both species. And he had the sanctuary bond with Velara, which had taught him things about Thessian biology that no one else knew. "I need time," Jake said, "and I need Dr. Chen and Healer Tavor to assist me." The conservative nobles protested. The champion must work alone. Accepting help is admission of inadequacy, but Velara spoke up. The challenge is to demonstrate worthy medical knowledge. Jake's knowledge includes knowing when to consult with other experts. A ruler who refuses to seek counsel is a fool, not a leader. "I support his request," Shalnara considered. "Acceptable. The champion has until sunset to complete the healing." They moved to the medical wing. Jake, Chen, and Tavor worked together, analyzing the child's condition. Crystal decay syndrome broke down the crystalline structures that formed the basis of Thessian physiology. It was genetic, progressive, and always fatal. "There's no cure," Tavor said sadly. "We've tried everything over centuries. The decay cannot be stopped." "Maybe not with Thessian medicine alone," Chen said, her mind racing. "But what about human genetic therapy? We've had success treating degenerative conditions by introducing modified cells that can repair damage." "Thessian biology doesn't work that way," Tavor objected. "We don't have discrete cells like humans. Our structure is more unified." "But Jake does," Chen said excitedly. The sanctuary bond changed his biology. He has both human and Thessian characteristics now. What if we use his modified cells as a template? Create a therapy based on his unique biology that can work with Thessian crystal structure. It was risky, experimental, the kind of procedure that should take years of research, not hours. But it was their only chance. They worked frantically, developing the treatment. Jake donated samples of his own tissue, which had been transformed by the sanctuary bond. Chen processed it, isolating the factors that allowed human and Thessian biology to coexist. Tavor prepared the delivery system, using Thessian medical technology to distribute the treatment throughout the child's body. As the sun approached the horizon, they were ready. The child was brought back to the arena. The entire empire watched through broadcast systems. Jake administered the treatment, his hands steady despite his fear. Nothing happened at first. Then slowly the child's crystalline skin began to change. The dull, decaying gray shifted to healthier colors. Blue, green, purple. The patterns of health returned. The child opened her eyes clearer than they had been in years. "I feel better," she said in wonder. "The pain is gone." Healer Tavor scanned her quickly. "The decay has stopped. More than stopped, it's reversing. The damaged crystal structure is regenerating." He looked at Jake with awe. "You did it. You actually cured crystal decay syndrome." The arena erupted in cheers. Not just the reformists, but even many conservatives were applauding. Jake had done something no Thessian healer had accomplished in centuries. He had proved that human medical,